having ordered them. With all the haunted attraction props they had accumulated over the 11 years they'd been doing this, he had plenty of skeletons and scary masks. Then Chloe stood and walked to the nearest oak tree, and it clicked for him. The rough pattern on the arm and the mask were imitation bark, the gray-brown hue meant to match the trees. When Chloe held the demonic tree face in place, and the skeletal evil tree arm up to the side of the oak's trunk, Tony grinned like a little kid. "That is gonna freak people out," he said. His most glowing review. After all, that was their great ambition. They'd been putting the whole display together as a team since Chloe was 6. She had loved it even then, never scared of the terrifying props. Her little brother, Rick, was 13 years old and in the 8th grade, and he still refused to even walk through the haunted woods. Once it had been fear that drove the kid, but Tony thought now it was simple disinterest. Either that, or Rick thought of the haunted woods as Dad and Chloe's thing, with himself and his mom on the outside. And maybe that was okay. Tony and his daughter had Halloween and scary movies and the haunted woods, but Chloe had zero interest in going fishing with her father and brother. As a first-generation Portuguese-American kid growing up in Quincy on Boston's South Shore, Tony had gone fishing with his father, Silverio, almost every Saturday morning from the time he could hold a fishing pole until the day he got married. When Ricky had been born, Tony's dad had been first to the hospital, beaming with pride. A machinist, he'd worked his body to ruin to support his family and always seemed exhausted to Tony, but that afternoon, holding his grandson in his arms and crowing about the day he would be able to take both his son and grandson fishing, Silverio Barbosa had never seemed more vividly alive. Less than a year later, cancer had taken him. He had never taken his grandson fishing. But even now, with Ricky, a teenager, old enough to demand they call him Rick, Tony took the boy fishing on Saturday mornings. Sometimes they settled into silence, enjoying the solitude, and sometimes Tony reminisced about his dad and his childhood and tried to share what little wisdom he felt he'd acquired in his life till now. So, if Rick didn't want anything to do with the haunted woods, wanted to leave that to his sister, that was more than okay. It was nice for Tony and Chloe to have something just for themselves, especially since Chloe was older, and while her grandfather had shown up at the hospital after her birth and pronounced her the most beautiful child he had ever seen, Silverio Barbosa had never declared any intention to one day take her fishing. Born in another time and another culture, he viewed that as entirely something the men did. Tony sometimes wondered if he had done the wrong thing, excluding Chloe from his fishing excursions with her little brother, but when it started, he had viewed it as a time to bond with Rick and time for Alice to bond with Chloe. He didn't know what was right. He just tried to do his best by the people he loved. This year had been a little different. It would be the last time, the end of the haunted woods, so he and Chloe had tried everything short of physical violence to get Rick involved and excited. He had made excuses, his disinterest clear. In the end, Tony didn't mind. This thing had always been his and Chloe's, and it seemed right that it would end that way. He hadn't explicitly told her this would be the last one, but she lived in the same house, had eyes and ears and a little intuition. She knew how long he had been out of work before he'd finally found a new job in August, knew not to answer the phone to avoid the bill collectors. Tony and Alice casually mentioned to neighbors that they were considering downsizing, so maybe people wouldn't realize they hadn't had a choice. Chloe could see the writing on the wall. "How many of those did we order?" Tony asked, admiring the tree demon again. "There are 3 sets," Chloe replied, studying the contents of the box. "The eyes glow. There's a switch. If we get some soft blue lights angled just right and put them on those trees at the third bend in the path," with one of the fog machines, "it'll be perfect." Chloe had a smile full of mischief. Her eyes gleamed with delight that matched his own. People came to Barbosa's haunted woods, donated money to whatever charity Tony and Chloe had chosen that year, and took a walk along the path that would scare the crap out of them. "Happy Halloween, kid," Tony said. "Happy Halloween, Pops." He hoped she wouldn't look up at him right then. She knew him too well.